Wind whispers across the vast Anatolian plains, a song not of peace, but of steel and struggle. This is the wind that carries the scent of distant battles and the whispered prayers of men who possess little more than their faith and their blades. From this very dust, a tribe emerges, the Kayit, exiled Turks, wanderers caught between mighty empires. They are a people too proud to ever kneel, yet too few in number to conquer. Among them walks a man whose eyes burn with a fire of purpose, a young warrior carrying the immense weight of destiny on his shoulders. His name is Ertugrul, son of Suleiman Shah. He rides at the head of a small band, just 40 horsemen. They may seem like outcasts, shepherds, and dreamers to the outside world, but within them, they carry a vision far greater than any army. Their belief isn't rooted in gold or the promise of empire, but in something more profound: honor, faith, and the unyielding pursuit of freedom. Every dawn, as the first light breaks over the horizon, they turn to face the east. They pray towards the rising sun, a symbol of their hope that one day their own banner will rise with it, casting a long shadow over the land. It is here, in the dark forests and across the barren hills of Anatolia, that Ertugrul learns the harsh, unforgiving lessons of survival. The world is a crucible, and he is being forged within it. He finds himself caught in a precarious position, fighting relentless battles on multiple fronts. On one side, the powerful Byzantine Empire with its ancient legions and fortified cities. On the other, the seemingly unstoppable Mongol hordes sweeping across the land like a storm. And as if external threats weren't enough, he must also contend with the venom of betrayal, a poison that seeps from within his own tribe. Ambitious kinsmen, spies, and doubters test his resolve at every turn. Yet, through the searing heat of fire and the cold sting of betrayal, one thing remains unbroken: Ertugrul's unwavering belief. His conviction that a great nation, a just state, can be born from the ashes of exile and despair. He sees not just what his people are wanderers, but what they could become: the foundation of an empire built on justice and faith. And so begins a journey that will, in time, shake the very foundations of the world. This is the origin story of the Ottomans, a saga of a people who rose from nothing. Their crescent banner, born from this humble beginning, would one day stretch across 3 continents, and their empire would stand for 6 remarkable centuries, shaping the course of human history. If you've just joined us for the rise of the Ottoman Empire, remember this is merely the prologue to an epic tale. The story has just begun. Stay with us as we continue this incredible journey. In our next chapter, The Sword and the Crescent, we will unveil the legendary battles that forged Ertugrul's name in history and set the stage for the dawn of a new world power. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story as captivating as we do, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you won't miss the next chapter in this incredible saga. We'll see you next time. The wind sweeping across Anatolia carried more than just dust, it carried destiny. Imagine a world in twilight, the once mighty Seljuk Sultanate crumbling. Tribes wandered without kings, and soldiers fought without banners. The great Mongol storm had swept through, leaving cities burned to ash and empires fractured like shattered glass. It was a time of chaos, an age of endings. And yet, among these ruins, a new tribe began to rise. They called themselves the Kayi. They were sons of the steppe, children of exile, hardened by the unforgiving plains. At their head rode a chieftain named Ertugrul. His immediate goal wasn't conquest, not glory, but simple survival for his people. He sought a home, a patch of land where his tribe could finally rest. But fate, as it so often does, had far grander plans for him. One fateful winter night, as snow blanketed the Anatolian hills, Ertugrul and his small band of horsemen stumbled upon a brutal battlefield. Two armies were locked in a death struggle. One, a force of Byzantine crusaders, the other, their fellow Seljuk Turks. Both sides were bleeding out in the snow, exhausted and on the brink of collapse. Ertugrul faced a critical choice. He could ride on, ensuring his own safety, or he could intervene. He chose to act. Seeing his fellow Muslims being overwhelmed, he and his warriors charged into the fray, turning the tide of battle and saving the wounded Seljuks from annihilation. This single act of bravery, this split-second decision on a frozen battlefield, would ripple through time and change the course of history. The Seljuk commander, grateful for this unexpected rescue, was none other than Sultan Alauddin Kaikabad himself. From the blood spilled on that battlefield, a powerful alliance was forged. The Sultan, recognizing Ertugrul's valor and loyalty, granted him a reward that would become the seed of an empire, a small frontier territory. UC*, nestled near the town of St. This land was no peaceful paradise. It was a borderland, a volatile frontier teetering between the chaos of the fractured Seljuk realm and the formidable, ancient Byzantine Empire. It was here, living under the constant shadow of the Byzantine eagle, that Ertugrul established his tribe's first real home. His people pitched their tents, grazed their flocks, and for the first time in a long time felt a sense of belonging. Ertugrul, looking out over his small encampment, could never have known that from this very soil his descendants would one day build a throne that would command 3 continents. But life on the frontier was a relentless struggle. Peace was a luxury they could not afford. The Byzantine lords across the border watched the newcomers with deep suspicion and hostility, seeing them as a threat to be eliminated. From the east, Mongol envoys would ride in, demanding crippling tribute and submission. Rival Turkish tribes, vying for the same scarce resources, were a constant source of conflict. Every dawn seemed to bring a new enemy, and every sunset a new burial. The frontier was a crucible, testing the limits of their endurance day after day. Yet, in the face of every hardship, Ertugrul saw only one path forward, a path guided by three unwavering principles: faith, honor, and the sword. He instilled this belief in his people, in his warriors, his Alps. He would tell them, "We are not conquerors of land, we are guardians of justice. Our cause is not to seize, but to protect. Our sword is not for tyranny, but for the oppressed." And they believed him. His conviction was their strength. They followed him into fire, through famine, and stood by him against every betrayal. They knew he fought not for personal gain, but for a divine cause and the future of their tribe. And so the legend of the Kayi began. It was a legend whispered in the markets of Kanya, told around campfires on the steppe, and feared in the castles of Byzantium. It was the story of a small tribe that, through sheer will and unwavering faith, began to carve out a destiny far greater than anyone could have imagined. This was the blood of the frontier, the foundation upon which everything else would be built. The struggles in St weren't just battles for survival. They were the first crucial steps in the rise of the Ottomans. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the hour of war. If you found this chapter of history as fascinating as we do, make sure to hit that like button, share this video with fellow history lovers, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel. You won't want to miss part 3, where we'll witness how Ertugrul's son, Osman, transforms his father's legacy from a frontier tribe into the fledgling beginnings of a world-shaking empire. See you in the next episode. Hello and welcome back to the Hour of War. If you've just joined us, we're tracing the fiery birth of one of history's greatest empires. This is part 4, the Fire of Bithynia, Wars against Byzantium. When we last left Osman, he was a bey, a leader of a small but fiercely loyal tribe of Kayi Turks, nestled on the edge of the mighty Byzantine Empire. He had a dream, a vision of a great tree sprouting from his heart, its branches casting a shadow over the entire world. But a dream is just a dream until it is forged in fire and steel. The time for that forging had come. The plains of Bithynia, a land of rolling hills and ancient cities in what is now northwestern Turkey, became the first great crucible for Osman's ambition. For centuries, this had been Byzantine territory, the buffer zone between the Christian heartland of Constantinople and the Muslim powers of the East. But the once mighty Eastern Roman Empire was a shadow of its former self, weakened by internal strife, endless civil wars, and the crushing blow of the Fourth Crusade a century earlier. Its frontier was a patchwork of poorly garrisoned forts and towns, ruled by local lords who were more concerned with their own rivalries than with the growing threat on their doorstep. Into this power vacuum rode Osman and his warriors. Imagine the scene. The plains tremble, not with the march of a disciplined, uniformed army, but with the thunder of thousands of hooves. These are the Turkmens, nomadic horsemen born in the saddle. They don't march in neat lines. They move like a force of nature, a river of men and horses flowing across the landscape. Above them, a new banner catches the wind blowing from the west, from the direction of their enemy. It's a simple but powerful symbol, a silver crescent moon on a blood-red field. This is Osman's banner, the symbol of a new power rising. Before him, scattered across the horizon, stand the crumbling fortresses of the Byzantine frontier, names that would soon be etched in blood and history: Karaçahisa, Yarhisa, Neg-El, and the strategic town of Bildat, to the Byzantines in their opulent palaces in Constantinople. These were just distant outposts, relics of a glorious past. They heard whispers of a new Turkish chieftain named Osman, but they scoffed. What was he? A shepherd, they called him. A leader of nomads with no cities, no crowns, no legitimacy. They saw him and his people as little more than raiders, a nuisance to be swatted away. They couldn't have been more wrong. The Byzantines underestimated the new kind of warfare Osman was perfecting. Their armies were built on heavy infantry and armored cavalries, low, powerful, and effective in pitched battles. But Osman's warriors didn't fight pitched battles, not at first. They were masters of the hit and run, the lightning raid, the ambush. They fought like the desert wind and scene, unpredictable and unstoppable. They would appear as if from nowhere, their arrows fired from powerful composite bows, darkening the sun. Their terrifying war cries, a chorus of Allahu Akbar, echoed like thunder through the valleys, striking fear into the hearts of garrison soldiers long before the first sword was even drawn. And at the very front of this storm rode Osman himself. He wasn't a general directing from the rear. He was a Ghazi, a warrior for the faith, leading the charge. Picture him, his sword gleaming like fire under the crescent moon, his eyes fixed on the walls of the first fortress. His call to his men was not for riches or for land, though those would come. His cry was a declaration of purpose. Not for gold. He would shout, not for personal glory, but for justice, for the word of Allah and the freedom of men. This was more than a war of conquest. It was a holy mission, a jihad in their eyes. And it gave his warriors a fervor and a resilience that the paid mercenaries of the Byzantine Empire simply could not match. The first major test of this new force was the fortress of Karaçahisa. It wasn't a massive citadel like Constantinople, but it was a strong, strategic castle that controlled the surrounding region. After a series of clashes and a determined siege, the fortress fell. This was a monumental victory. But what Osman did next was even more significant. When he entered the conquered fortress, he didn't simply loot it and move on. His first act was to dismount, lay his prayer rug on its ancient stones, and pray. It was in Karaçahisa that a pivotal moment in the founding of the Ottoman state occurred. For the first time, the **Khutbah*, the traditional Friday sermon delivered in the mosque, was read in Osman's name. In the Islamic world, having the khutbah read in your name was one of the two traditional signs of sovereignty, the other being the minting of coins. It was a formal declaration to the world that Osman was no longer just a tribal chieftain or a Byzantine vassal. He was a sovereign ruler, an emir, the founder of a new state. The shepherd from the steppes of Anatolia was now laying the institutional foundations of an empire. This victory sent shockwaves through the region. The local Byzantine governors, the *Tekfurs*, finally realized that Osman was not just another raider. He was a nation builder, and he was taking their lands piece by piece. They put aside their petty squabbles and began to form alliances, determined to crush this upstart Turk before he grew any stronger. From the west, new Byzantine armies began to march. These were not the demoralized garrisons of the frontier. These were prouder, heavier forces, clad in better armor, led by experienced lords sworn to defend the empire and the Christian faith. They were coming to make an example of Osman. They were coming to wipe his fledgling state off the map. But they would soon learn a harsh lesson. They would learn what it means to face a people united by faith and a leader whose dream had already conquered fate. The fire of Bithynia was just beginning to burn, and its flames were destined to engulf an empire. That concludes part 4 of the rise of the Ottoman Empire. The stage is now set for an even more dramatic confrontation. What happens when the full might of the local Byzantine lords comes crashing down on Osman? Join us next time for part 5, The Siege of Balalchek, Blood and Betrayal, where alliances are tested and treachery lurks in the shadows. If you're enjoying this journey into the heart of history, please consider liking this video, sharing it with a fellow history enthusiast, and subscribing to the Hour of War for more. Your support allows us to keep telling these incredible stories. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next chapter. In the deep, silent dark of the Anatolian frontier, the only sound was the distant cry of wolves echoing from the hills. By the embers of a dying fire, Osman sat, a weary warrior. His sword, a veteran of countless clashes, lay beside him, its steel having tasted both blood and fate. Exhausted from the day's skirmishes, he closed his eyes, completely unaware that the coming dawn would not just bring a new day, but a new destiny. As he drifted into sleep, a vision took hold of him, a dream so vivid it felt more real than the waking world. He saw a magnificent moon, impossibly large, rising not from the horizon, but from the heart of his beloved Malhon Hattin. It ascended into the heavens, casting a silver glow over the land, and from this moon a colossal tree began to grow. Its roots, like mighty anchors, plunged deep into the earth, securing its foundation across continents. Its branches, vast and sprawling, stretched over the highest mountains and across the widest seas, casting a great shadow over the world. Beneath the canopy of this wondrous tree, people from all corners of the globe gathered. He saw kings in their finery, fierce warriors with their banners, and wise scholars with their scrolls. And on the lips of every single one of them was his name, Osman. Then, just as the vision reached its peak, the great tree burst into a blinding light. The light coalesced into a single, perfect crescent, shining with a brilliance that outshone even the midday sun. It was a symbol of power, of faith, of a new era. Osman awoke with a start. The fire had turned to cold ash, and the pre-dawn chill had settled in his bones. But within him, a different kind of fire was burning, the fire of his dream. The vision was seared into his mind, a prophecy he could not ignore. He immediately sought out his mentor, the wise and respected Sheikh Edebali, a man whose counsel he trusted above all others. He recounted the dream in every detail: the moon, the tree, the gathered nations, and the shining crescent. The old sheikh listened intently, his eyes seeming to look through Osman and into the future itself. When Osman finished, a knowing smile graced the old man's lips. "Osman," he said, his voice calm and certain, "this is no mere dream. It is a message from the divine. Your descendants shall be like that great tree. You, my son, will plant a seed of governance, a seed that will grow to shelter the world. An empire will rise from your lineage." He paused, his gaze becoming stern, his next words carrying the weight of a sacred oath. "But remember this always. A sword without justice is nothing but a tool of darkness. Power without righteousness is a path to ruin." Those words struck Osman's heart like a thunderclap. They became his creed, the guiding principle of his life. In that moment, he was transformed. He was no longer just Osman, the chieftain of a small band of nomadic warriors on the edge of a crumbling empire. He was Osman, chosen by destiny, the harbinger of a new world order. From that day forward, his banner, the flag that would lead his armies into battle, bore the symbol from his dream, the crescent moon, and his sword. It was no longer just a weapon for conquest. It was now an instrument of justice, the tool with which he would begin to carve out the foundations of an empire. This was not just a new chapter in his life. It was the first page in the history of a dynasty that would last for 600 years. The dream was over, but the reality was just beginning. Thank you for watching this chapter of our story. If you've just joined us, this was the dream of Osman, a pivotal moment in the rise of one of history's greatest empires. But this is far from the end. The story is just getting started. Make sure you're subscribed to our channel and have hit that notification bell, because you won't want to miss what comes next. The dream must now be forged into reality, and that can only be done through fire and steel. Join us next time as Osman's vision ignites into a full-blown war, and the first true seeds of the Ottoman Empire are sown in blood and battle. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you in the next chapter. Have you ever wondered how a small, scattered group of nomadic tribes could rise to build one of the most powerful and enduring empires in history? How a single man's vision could ignite a fire that would burn for over 600 years? This is the story of that man and the dawn of an empire that would forever change the map of the world. Welcome back to our series as we dive into the heart of Anatolia, where history itself holds its breath. The year is 1299. The sun rises over the rugged landscape of Anatolia, painting the sky in shades of blood and fire. Smoke, like the slow breath of slumbering dragons, curls lazily from the valleys below. On a windswept ridge, a young man stands, his gaze fixed eastward, toward the lands of the once mighty Byzantine Empire. His name is Osman. He is young, yes, but in his chest beats the heart of a lion, and in his eyes a fierce, unyielding ambition. Osman's people, the Kai tribe, are a branch of the Oghuz Turks. They are nomadic warriors, herders, and artisans. They are poor, scattered across the hills and plains. But they are united by something far more powerful than wealth or land, a burning, unwavering faith. This faith is their armor, their guide, and their strength. They have been pushed and pulled by the tides of greater powers for generations, the Mongols to the east, the Byzantines to the west. But now something is changing. A new energy is gathering. A storm is brewing in these Anatolian hills. From his vantage point, Osman can see the distant gleam of a city. Its domes and minarets shimmer in the morning light, a jewel set in the green landscape. This is Bursa, a prosperous Byzantine city. To Osman, it is more than just a city. It is a symbol of what could be, a promise of a future yet to be claimed. In this land, two worlds collide. The world of the cross, represented by the ancient, fading glory of the Byzantine Empire, and the world of the Crescent, embodied by the vibrant, growing power of the Turkic tribes. History itself seems to be watching, silent and patient, waiting to see which force will prevail. For Osman, his sword is not just a tool for combat. It's not merely steel forged for battle. It is an extension of his will, a voice for a people who have long been silent. It represents a promise, a declaration, the birth of a nation yet to be fully realized. This sword will carve out a new destiny from the rock and soil of Anatolia. It is the instrument through which a dream will become a reality. Osman possesses a rare gift, the ability to inspire loyalty and unite disparate groups under a single banner. He travels through the hills from one encampment to another, speaking not as a conqueror, but as a brother. He shares his vision of a unified state, a Ghazi state, dedicated to defending and expanding the frontiers of their faith. He speaks of justice, of opportunity, and of a shared identity. His charisma is magnetic, his conviction absolute. One by one, the other Turkic tribes, weary of internal squabbles and the rule of distant, uncaring lords, begin to listen. They see in Osman not just a warlord, but a leader. The sound of drums begins to echo through the valleys, a sound that has not been heard with such unity for generations. It is the heartbeat of a new power. Warriors, once fighting for their own small clans, now ride together under Osman's standard. Their war cry thunders across the landscape, a powerful declaration of faith and purpose. Allahu Akbar, God is the greatest. It is a cry that makes the very earth seem to tremble, a sound that strikes fear into the hearts of their enemies and fills their own with courage. The established powers of the region, the decaying Byzantine Empire and the fractured Seljuk successor states, look upon this rising tide with disdain and mockery. To them, Osman and his followers are nothing more than a band of nomadic raiders, a temporary nuisance on their borders. They are old, complacent, and blind to the monumental shift happening right under their noses. They see tribesmen, not the architects of an empire. They hear a rabble, not the chorus of a new world order. They underestimate the power of faith, the strength of unity, and the indomitable will of a leader like Osman. But here, in these seemingly insignificant hills, among these so-called raiders, the seed of a mighty empire is being sown. It is a seed nourished by faith, watered by the warrior spirit of the Turkic people, and cultivated by the strategic genius of Osman. This is the very beginning of the Ottoman state, a principality that would grow against all odds into a global superpower. An empire that would one day command vast territories across 3 continents. An empire whose culture, laws, and military might would shake the very foundations of the world for centuries to come. Osman's initial campaigns are small, but they are smart and relentless. He doesn't launch a full-scale invasion of Byzantium. Instead, he employs the classic tactics of a Ghazi warrior, swift raids, strategic sieges of smaller fortresses, and the gradual absorption of surrounding lands. He builds a loyal following by distributing spoils fairly and establishing just governance in the territories he captures. He turns conquered Byzantine peasants into loyal subjects by offering them lower taxes and greater security than their former masters ever did. He is not just conquering land, he is winning hearts and minds. Each victory, no matter how small, adds to his legend. Each fortress taken becomes a new base of operations. Each battle won brings more warriors flocking to his banner, drawn by the promise of glory and purpose. The Ottoman Principality begins to expand, like a slow but unstoppable tide, creeping ever closer to the heart of Byzantine Anatolia. The story of Osman is just beginning, but the echoes of his actions are already starting to reshape the world. What he has started here, in the red dawn of Anatolia, will not end until it has reached the gates of Vienna and the shores of the Indian Ocean. The world just doesn't know it yet. This is the incredible story of how it all began. The journey is far from over. Join us next time as we continue to follow the rise of Osman and witness the birth of the Ottoman Empire. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into the past as fascinating as I did, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you don't miss part 6. Your support helps us continue to bring these epic stories to life. See you in the next one. The years ticked by, one season blending into the next, and what was once the small, hardy tribe of Osman began to gather strength, coalescing into a storm that was about to sweep across Anatolia. The mantle of leadership passed from father to son. Osman's heir, Orhan, was a man forged in the same crucible of faith and ambition, but with his own unique fire. When he led his men into battle, it was with a chilling duality, the thunderous courage of ancient prophets proclaiming a new dawn, and the profound, predatory silence of a wolf pack closing in on its prey. He moved with purpose, his gaze fixed on a future only he could see. The cities of the Byzantine frontier, once so confident behind their high stone walls, began to feel the pressure. They had resisted countless raids before, but this was different. This wasn't just a raid for plunder. This was a force of destiny knocking at their gates. One by one, the cities that had stood for centuries began to tremble and then fall. The resistance crumbled, not just to the force of arms, but to the relentless, unwavering will of the men at their gates. The climax of this early campaign came with the fall of Berzin, a jewel of the Byzantine Empire, a strategic and symbolic prize. As Oran's warriors breached the walls, a new standard was raised over the city. The crescent, gleaming in the sun, rose above Bursa, signaling not just a victory, but the birth of a new capital, a new heart for a burgeoning empire. However, the taste of victory is often soured by the bitterness of human nature. Power is a magnet, and it attracts not only allies, but also rivals, envy, and betrayal. The very bonds of kinship, once the bedrock of the tribe, began to show cracks. Brothers, who had once fought back to back, now eyed each other with suspicion, their ambitions pulling them in different directions. Generals, who had sworn loyalty to their Khan, began to whisper in the shadows, questioning his decisions, their own pride and hunger for power clouding their judgment. The court, once a simple gathering of warriors, became a complex web of intrigue and deceit. Blood was spilled not just on the battlefield, but in the halls of power, as the struggle for influence turned deadly. Yet amid this storm of blood and betrayal, one anchor held firm, one truth remained unshakable: their faith. This wasn't a simple conquest for land or gold in the eyes of the Turks. They were driven by a profound belief that they were instruments of a higher will. They saw their swords not as tools of oppression, but as instruments of divine justice, meant to correct the wrongs of the world and establish a righteous order. Every campaign was sanctified, every battle a physical manifestation of their devotion. This conviction gave them a strength that armies and walls couldn't break. It was the spiritual fuel for their relentless expansion. And as their influence spread, as their victories mounted, the world began to take notice. From the bazaars of Cairo to the courts of Venice, whispers turned into conversations, and conversations turned into pronouncements. A new name started to echo across the continents, a name that carried with it the weight of conquest and the mystique of unwavering belief: Ottoman. This wasn't just a label for a new dynasty or a new territory. It was the name for a phenomenon, a force of history that was reshaping the known world. But the true power of this name, the secret to its endurance, lay in its origins. The destiny of the Ottomans wasn't being written by kings in gilded palaces, surrounded by maps and strategists. It was being forged on the ground by the believers themselves. It was written in the sweat of the soldier, the determination of the settler, and the unwavering faith of a people who saw every single battle not as a political act, but as a prayer offered with steel and fire, a prayer for a future they believed was preordained. And as the story of Orhan and his burgeoning empire unfolded, it became clear that this prayer was being answered, setting the stage for a saga that would last for 600 years. This is where we pause our story for now, but the rise of the Ottomans is far from over. Join us next time as we continue this incredible journey. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this chapter of history, please consider liking the video and subscribing to our channel for more. We'll see you in part 7. Hello, history lovers, and welcome back to our deep dive into the epic story of the Ottoman Empire. In our last chapter, we witnessed the birth of a powerhouse, a force that was reshaping the known world. Today, we journey deeper into the heart of that empire, a place of dazzling glory and creeping shadows. Picture this. The mid-15th century. The Ottoman Empire is no longer just a regional player. It's a colossal entity stretching from the sun-scorched deserts of Arabia to the very gates of Europe. Its armies, a river of steel and fire, seem unstoppable. The Crescent banner flies over lands that were once the domain of Byzantines, Serbs and Mamluks. To the outside world, the empire is a monolith of power, a testament to ambition and military genius. The wealth of conquered nations flows into its coffers, funding the construction of magnificent mosques, bustling bazaars, and opulent palaces that glitter under the Anatolian sun. But as any student of history knows, the brightest light casts the darkest shadow. And within the golden walls of the Topkapi Palace, a different kind of battle was being waged. Power is a potent poison, and in the heart of the empire, it began to corrupt the early sultans, who once fought alongside their men in the dust and mud of the battlefield, were becoming increasingly distant. They were no longer just warriors. They were emperors, surrounded by a complex web of courtly etiquette, lavish ceremony, and 1,000 whispers. This growing distance created a vacuum, and into that vacuum stepped the viziers, the eunuchs, and the powerful women of the harem. The court became a labyrinth of intrigue, a chess game where the prize was the sultan's ear. Alliances were forged in secret and broken in an instant. A careless word could lead to exile. A perceived slight could mean a silken cord in the dead of night. The state's machinery, once efficient and meritocratic, began to clog with nepotism and bribery. Officials who had once served the empire now served only their own ambitions, lining their pockets with gold meant for the army or for public works. And what of the army? The Janissaries, the elite slave soldiers who had been the very backbone of Ottoman conquests, were growing restless. They were the kingmakers, the sharpest sword of the empire, and they knew it. Their loyalty, once absolute, now came with a price. They began to demand greater privileges, larger donatives upon the accession of a new sultan, and a say in the politics of the state. Their barracks in Constantinople were a hotbed of dissent, and their formidable power, once directed outward at the enemies of the empire, could just as easily be turned inward. A disgruntled Janissary cause was a dagger pointed at the Sultan's own throat. The glorious expansion had also stretched the empire's resources to their limits. Governing such a vast and diverse territory was a monumental task. From the mountains of the Balkans to the plains of Mesopotamia, the Ottomans ruled over a dizzying array of peoples, cultures, and religions. While the empire was often surprisingly tolerant for its time, maintaining control required a constant military presence and a complex bureaucracy that was becoming increasingly bloated and inefficient. The river of steel was beginning to slow, weighed down by its own immense size. Cracks were appearing in the magnificent facade. It seemed as if the empire might be destined to crumble from within, a victim of its own success. The whispers in the palace grew louder, the janissaries grew bolder, and the treasury's coffers grew lighter. It was a time of uncertainty, a moment where the grand Ottoman project could have faltered and collapsed. But history is often shaped by singular individuals, by figures who rise to meet the challenges of their time. And amid the growing corruption and internal strife, one such figure emerged, a young sultan, intelligent, ambitious, and utterly ruthless. He had watched the decay from a young age, had learned the deadly games of the court, and had forged himself in the fires of that intrigue. He was a scholar who spoke 6 languages, an engineer who understood the power of new technology, and a warrior with an unquenchable thirst for glory. His name was Mehmed. When he ascended the throne, many in the court underestimated him. They saw a young man, perhaps bookish, perhaps easily manipulated. They were wrong. Dead wrong. Mehmed possessed a clarity of vision that cut through the fog of corruption. He knew that to save the empire from itself, to reunite its fractured purpose and reignite its spirit of conquest, he needed a goal. Not just any goal, but an objective so audacious, so legendary, that it would bind the entire empire to his will. He looked across the Bosphorus Strait at the ancient triple-layered walls of a city that had defied conquerors for 1,000 years. A city that was a ghost of its former glory but remained a potent symbol, the heart of Eastern Christendom. A city they called the Queen of Cities, Constantinople. For centuries, Muslim rulers had dreamed of capturing it. It was a prize prophesied, a strategic linchpin that would unite the European and Asian halves of his empire. For Mehmed, it was more than that. It was his destiny. Taking Constantinople would silence the whispers in his court. It would harness the restless energy of the Janissaries, and it would cement his name in history, not just as a sultan, but as a conqueror. The world would soon know him as Mehmed the Conqueror. His gaze was now fixed upon the unconquerable city. The greatest siege in a generation was about to begin. The fate of two empires and the course of world history hung in the balance. And that is where we will leave it for today. The stage is set for a confrontation that will echo through the ages. Join us next time as we dive into the epic siege of Constantinople. Thank you for watching. If you're enjoying this journey through history, please consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss a single chapter of this incredible story. We'll see you in part 8. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our series. Today we stand at the precipice of one of history's most earth-shattering moments. We're in the year 1453, a year etched forever in the annals of time. The air around Constantinople, the last glittering remnant of the once mighty Roman Empire, is thick with tension, smoke, and the metallic tang of impending battle. For 40 long days and 40 grueling nights, the city has been under siege, a lone island against a vast Ottoman sea. Imagine the scene. Outside the legendary Theodosian walls, an army unlike any seen before is assembled. At its head is the young, ambitious Sultan Mehmed II, a man whose entire being is focused on one singular goal: to conquer the city that has defied his ancestors for centuries. And he has brought a new kind of terror with him, a weapon that will change the face of warfare forever. The great bombards, massive cannons forged by the master craftsman Orban. These behemoths, some capable of hurling stone balls weighing over half a ton, have been pounding the ancient defenses relentlessly. The sound is apocalyptic, a constant, deafening roar that shakes the very foundations of the city and the souls of its defenders. It's the thunder of a new age, drowning out the echoes of the old. Inside the walls, the mood is a desperate mix of defiance and prayer. The city is a ghost of its former self. Once a bustling metropolis of 1 million people, its population has dwindled to perhaps 50,000. The once grand avenues are quiet, the magnificent forums now overgrown, but its spirit, though beleaguered, is not yet broken. The defenders, a motley crew of about 7,000 men, by Genoese, Venetians, and a handful of other volunteers, are led by the last Roman emperor, Constantine Onsi Palaiologos. He isn't a ruler hiding in his palace. He is on the walls, fighting alongside his men, a soldier emperor embodying the last stand of his 1,000-year-old empire. He knows the odds are impossible, but surrender is not an option. This is a fight for their homes, their faith, and the legacy of Rome itself, the city's greatest hope and its greatest vulnerability is the sea. The Golden Horn, the city's natural harbour, is protected by a massive iron chain stretching across its mouth, preventing the Ottoman fleet from entering. This chain has held fast, a symbol of Byzantine ingenuity, but Mehmed is not a man to be deterred by a single obstacle. He conceives a plan of audacious genius, a feat that sounds like something from myth. He decides that if his ships cannot sail into the harbour, they will go overland. Picture this: under the cover of darkness, thousands of his men work feverishly. They construct a massive roadway of greased logs stretching from the Bosphorus over the hill of Galata and down into the Golden Horn. And then, one by one, they begin to haul his warships, dozens of them, out of the water and drag them over land. To the sentries on the walls of Constantinople, the sight that greets them at dawn is one of pure, terrifying disbelief. Where there was an empty harbour the night before, there is now an Ottoman fleet, their sails unfurled, their cannons aimed at the city's weakest flank. The psychological blow is immense. It's a miracle of engineering and willpower, a sign that their enemy is no ordinary conqueror. He is a man who can literally move mountains, or in this case, a navy. The religious fervor on both sides is palpable. Within the hallowed halls of the Hagia Sophia, the magnificent cathedral that has been the heart of Orthodox Christianity for nearly 1,000 years, the air is heavy with the scent of incense and the sound of ceaseless prayer. Priests lead solemn processions, carrying sacred icons through the streets, pleading for divine intervention. They look to the heavens for a sign, a miracle to save their city, just as it had been saved so many times before. Outside the walls, the call of the muezzin echoes from the Ottoman camp 5 times a day. The Janissaries, the Sultan's elite troops, pray for victory, for the honor of fulfilling a prophecy that a great Muslim leader would one day conquer the city of Constantine. This isn't just a battle for territory. It's a clash of civilizations, a collision of 2 worlds, 2 faiths, each convinced of its own divine destiny. As the days turn into weeks, the city becomes a landscape of ruin and exhaustion. The constant cannon fire has taken its toll. Sections of the mighty outer wall, which had stood for a millennium against every foe, are now little more than rubble. The defenders work tirelessly, day and night, to patch the breaches with barrels of earth, stones and wooden palisades, but it's a losing battle. For every stone they replace, a dozen more are blasted away. Food is scarce, ammunition is dwindling, and the men are bone-weary, their bodies bruised and their spirits frayed. Yet, every time the Ottomans launch an assault, they are met with ferocious resistance. Greek fire, boiling oil, and a hail of arrows and stones rain down from the ramparts. The defenders fight with the courage of desperation, knowing that every inch of ground they give up is an inch closer to the end. Mehmed grows impatient. His Grand Vizier and other advisors urge caution, some even suggesting he accept a hefty tribute and lift the siege. But Mehmed's resolve is iron. He has staked his reputation, his entire future on this campaign. Failure is unthinkable. He offers the emperor one final chance to surrender. He promises to spare the lives of the citizens and allow Constantine to rule as a governor elsewhere. The emperor's reply is legendary, a testament to the unyielding pride of Rome. He states that he cannot give away the city. He and his people have resolved to die in its defense. The message is clear. There will be no negotiation. The fate of Constantinople will be decided by the sword. And so Mehmed prepares for the final all-out assault. He declares a day of rest and prayer for his army, promising them unimaginable riches and the glory of the conquest. For 3 days, he tells them they can plunder the city as they wish. The soldiers' morale soars. They know the end is near. Inside the city, the silence that descends is almost more terrifying than the cannon fire. They know what this pause means. It is the calm before the final storm. A strange, almost supernatural series of events unnerves the defenders. A thick, inexplicable fog blankets the city for a day. Then, during a lunar eclipse, the moon appears blood red, and most ominously, on the night before the final attack, witnesses claim to see a strange light rise from the dome of the Hagia Sophia flicker and then ascend into the heavens. To the terrified populace, it is a devastating omen. The Holy Spirit, the protector of the city, has abandoned them. On the evening of May 28th, a profound and sorrowful unity fills Constantinople. In the Hagia Sophia, what is to be the last Christian service is held. Orthodox priests and Catholic cardinals, who had been at odds for centuries, put aside their differences and share communion. The emperor himself is there, praying alongside his soldiers and citizens, Latins and Greeks. Rich and poor, united in their final hours. After the service, he goes to the walls for the last time, asking forgiveness from any he might have wronged, and prepares to meet his destiny. Before the first light of dawn on Tuesday, May 29, 1453, the attack begins. It comes not as a single wave, but as a relentless, multi-pronged assault designed to exhaust the last dregs of the defenders' strength. First, the irregular troops, the Boshi Bazauks, are sent forward. A wave of bodies meant to absorb the first volley of defense and tire the Byzantines. They are repelled, but the cost is high. Then come the Anatolian regiments, more disciplined and better equipped. They press the attack with greater ferocity, but they too are thrown back. The defense holds, but just barely. The defenders are fighting like lions, led by the emperor and the brave Genoese commander Giovanni Giustiniani Longo, who has been the heart of the military resistance. For 2 hours, the thin line of defenders holds against overwhelming numbers. But then, disaster strikes. Giustiniani, the brilliant professional soldier, is grievously wounded by an arquebus shot. His men, seeing their leader fall, carry him away from the front line. His departure, even if necessary, creates a moment of confusion and panic. The morale of the Genoese wavers, and it is in that precise moment of weakness that fate, or perhaps a simple accident, intervenes. A small unlocked postern gate, a sally port called the Kerke Porta, is discovered by a handful of Ottoman soldiers. It was likely left open by accident after a previous sortie. They pour through. Simultaneously, the elite Janissaries, whom Mehmed has held in reserve, launch their final decisive push at the most heavily damaged section of the wall. With their commander gone and enemies now appearing behind them, the defenders' line finally breaks. Chaos erupts. The Janissaries scale the makeshift ramparts, and one of them, a giant of a man named Hazen of Ulyabat, plants the Ottoman standard on top of the wall. Though he is cut down, dozens more follow him. The cry goes up. The city is taken. The Emperor Constantine XI, seeing that all is lost, casts off his imperial insignia and leads his last remaining men in a final, desperate charge into the oncoming flood of invaders. He disappears into the fray, fighting as a common soldier, choosing to die with his city rather than witness its fall. His body is never definitively identified. He dies as the last Roman emperor, a final tragic hero at the end of a long and glorious line. The gates of history swing shut on one era and open onto another. The Crescent flag rises over the walls of Constantinople. The city that was the queen of cities, the heart of an empire for over 1100 years, has fallen. The next chapter, not just for the Turks, but for the entire world, is about to begin, and we will explore the profound consequences of that morning in the next and final part of our series. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through history. If you've found this story as captivating as I have, please consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and hitting that notification bell so you won't miss the conclusion. Your support means the world to us. See you next time for the finale. From the ashes of conquest, a new dawn broke over the lands once held by Byzantium. The Ottoman spirit, forged in the crucible of battle, now turned its immense energy inward. Not just to rule, but to create. A civilization unlike any before it began to take shape. One that would blend the traditions of the East and West into a dazzling new tapestry. The horsemen who had stormed the gates of Constantinople became builders, poets, and scholars. They weren't just conquerors anymore, they were the architects of a new world. Across the sprawling empire, a renaissance was underway. The Ottomans became masters of science, law, and art, absorbing knowledge from every corner of their domain and beyond. They studied the ancient Greeks, debated the philosophies of the Persians, and refined the mathematical discoveries of the Arabs. In the workshops of Istanbul, artisans perfected crafts like Iznik tile-making, creating ceramic masterpieces that blazed with color and intricate design. Calligraphers transformed the written word into breathtaking art, their pens dancing across the page to create works of profound beauty and spiritual significance. This was an age of monumental ambition. Mosques rose like man-made mountains, their slender minarets piercing the sky as if reaching for the divine. Domes, vast and shimmering, were decorated with geometric patterns and floral motifs, designed to look like a star-filled heavens brought down to earth. The Topkapi Palace, the heart of the empire, was a city within a cittier labyrinth of opulent courtyards, lavish pavilions, and mysterious harems, all buzzing with the energy of a global superpower. The air was thick with the scent of spices from the east, the murmur of dozens of languages, and the ambition of those who came to seek their fortune at the center of the world. At the helm of this golden age was a man whose name would become synonymous with its splendor, Suleiman, the magnificent Bur. To his own people, he was known as Kanuni. Suleiman understood that an empire could not be held together by the sword alone. He ruled not just with military might, but with a profound sense of justice and a keen intellect. He reformed the legal system, creating a comprehensive code of laws that would govern the empire for centuries. These laws covered everything from criminal justice to taxation, ensuring a degree of order and predictability for his diverse subjects, whether they were Muslims, Christians, or Jews. Suleiman was a true Renaissance prince. He was a gifted poet himself, writing under the pen name Mahibi, or lover. His verses spoke of love, devotion, and the burdens of power. He was a patron of the arts, and under his reign, the imperial workshops produced some of the most spectacular works of Ottoman art. He commissioned the greatest architect of the era, Mimasinan, to build mosques and bridges that would stand as timeless symbols of Ottoman power and piety. The Suleimani Mosque, which still dominates the Istanbul skyline today, is Sinan's masterpiece, a testament to both his genius and Suleiman's vision. Under Suleiman's 4-decade-long reign, the Ottoman Empire reached its zenith. His armies marched deep into the heart of Europe, laying siege to Vienna and striking fear into the hearts of European monarchs. His navies, commanded by fearsome admirals like Barbarossa, dominated the Mediterranean Sea. The empire stretched from the plains of Hungary to the holy city of Mecca. From the shores of Algiers in North Africa to the ancient city of Baghdad in Mesopotamia. It was a true world empire, a bridge between continents, controlling the vital trade routes that connected East and West. The world looked upon the Ottomans with a mixture of awe and trepidation. European ambassadors who visited the court of Suleiman sent back dispatches filled with descriptions of unimaginable wealth, impeccable order, and formidable military power. They were mesmerized by the discipline of the Janissaries, the elite infantry corps of the Sultan, and humbled by the grandeur of his court. To many, the Ottoman Empire seemed invincible, an unstoppable force destined to reshape the world in its own image. It was a place of opportunity for some, a terrifying threat to others. This was a world where a shepherd boy from the Balkans could rise to become the Grand Vizier, the second most powerful man in the empire. It was a world where Italian painters, German clockmakers, and Persian poets all found a home and a purpose in the bustling capital of Istanbul. The empire was a mosaic of cultures, languages, and religions, all held together by the authority of the Sultan and the intricate web of Ottoman administration. It was a complex, dynamic, and often contradictory society, a place of both incredible tolerance and ruthless ambition. Yet, within every golden age, a shadow waits. The very success of the empire created new challenges. The vastness of its territory made it difficult to govern. The constant warfare on multiple fronts drained the treasury, and within the gilded walls of the Topkapi Palace, intrigue and rivalry began to fester, even within the Sultan's own family. The same fire that gives light and warmth, that forges empires and inspires great art, also has the power to burn and consume. The seeds of decline were being sown even as the empire reached its most brilliant heights. The magnificent facade of power and prosperity concealed vulnerabilities that would, in time, begin to crack. The story of the Ottoman Golden Age is a story of incredible achievement, of a society that reached for the heavens and, for a time, seemed to grasp them. But it's also a cautionary tale about the nature of power and the inevitability of change. The sun cannot stay at its zenith forever. As the reign of Suleiman the Magnificent drew to a close, the question on everyone's mind was, what comes next? Could this glorious era last, or was the empire destined to follow the path of all great powers before it? Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through history. If you've enjoyed this exploration of the Ottoman Empire's golden age, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel for more stories from the past. Your support means the world to me. And be sure to tune in for the next part, where we'll explore the shadows that began to gather at the heart of the empire. See you next time. Centuries drifted by, like grains of sand through an hourglass. The empire that once commanded the seas, the empire whose name once shook the earth, now stood weary, its grand tapestry fractured. The once mighty giant was tired. It had been through countless wars, each one a deep cut that bled it dry, sapping its strength and its treasure. The vibrant lifeblood of the empire, its youth and its riches, had been spilled on battlefields from Vienna to the Persian deserts. Inside the opulent palaces of Istanbul, a different kind of war was being waged, not with swords and cannons, but with whispers, with plots, with a relentless corrosion of politics that ate away at the empire's very core. Factions vied for power, sultans became pawns in complex games of intrigue, and the strong, centralized authority that had been the empire's backbone began to crumble. The intricate machinery of state, once the envy of the world, grew rusty and inefficient. Yet, even as the Ottoman sun began its long, slow descent, its light refused to be extinguished. The spirit of the empire, forged in the fires of faith and conquests, proved far more resilient than its political structures. As dawn breaks over the Bosphorus, the call to prayer still echoes from the minarets of the Blue Mosque and the Hagia Sophia, a timeless melody that has woven itself into the very fabric of the city. It's a sound that connects the present to a deep and resonant past. That enduring spirit is everywhere. It's in the faith that has guided generations, a constant star in a changing sky. It's in the art, in the breathtaking calligraphy, the intricate tilework of Iznik, and the soaring domes that still inspire awe. You can feel it in the courage that defined its soldiers and its people. A legacy of defiance and pride that refused to surrender to the tides of history. All of these elements remained, like glowing embers in the cold ashes of time, a testament to a civilization's undying soul. This is a story we see repeated throughout history. Empires fall. The great Roman legions march into memory, the Mongol hordes fade back into the steppes, and the British lion grows old. Civilizations, no matter how grand, eventually crumble under their own weight or the relentless pressure of a changing world. It's a natural cycle of rise and fall, of birth and decay. But the story of those who dared to dream, those who looked to the heavens and believed in a divine destiny, that story never truly ends. It transforms, it evolves, but it doesn't vanish. The fire that a young warrior named Osman kindled on the Anatolian steppe, a small spark of ambition and faith, grew into a blazing inferno that illuminated the world for 600 years. And even now, that fire still burns. It burns in the hearts of the people who carry its legacy. It burns in the pages of history, a story of incredible triumphs and profound tragedies that continues to captivate and teach us. And it burns in the very soul of the East, a permanent mark on the cultural and spiritual landscape of the world. The Crescent may have waned, but its light has never truly gone out. This was part 10, the final chapter of our journey through the rise of the Crescent Empire. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible adventure through history. It's been an honor to share these stories with you. If you've enjoyed this series, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more deep dives into the past. We have many more stories to tell. Thank you for watching.